Moi drodzy, wyrzucone z gry i niemożliwe do zdobycia itemy w World of Warcraft. Takich itemów jest całkiem sporo, zobaczymy sobie dzisiaj filmik o itemkach, których już nie można zdobyć. Z mojej głowy jestem w stanie wymienić na przykład challenge mode'owe przedmioty z Warlords of Draenor oraz Mists of Pandarii. Co prawda te Warlords of Draenorowe zostały dodane, później w Legionie jako takiej był trochę zmieniony wygląd, na przykład trochę shouldery u Huntera były zmienione i jakby wizualia są trochę jakby stonowane w dół i są inne kolory paletów, ale no mimo wszystko to nie jest ten item, nie? Pozdrawiam Nexus Live. Let's go.
I'm going to talk to you about legendaries that were once in WoW that are no longer, and legendaries that were
ARTNS,
planted in the game but never saw the light of day. I did
Powiem ci odnośnie Season Discovery, dla nooba to weź sobie Huntera.
make a video kind of similar to this before about legendaries currently in WoW and how to get them, so a link to that will be at the end of this video. But anyways, let's get started. First off,
Dobra.
let's talk about the legendary that we've all heard about and was found in the vanilla
The
game battles,
Ashbringer,
but was
corrupted
never actually
Ashbringer.
obtainable as a legendary. That's Ashbringer, Blade of the Scarlet
był
High Lord.
dowódca
This is a
chyba,
blade
nie?
that High Lord Mograine wielded,
Czy
which
do
was named
do
after him
Tebeca?
due to his ability to smite undead,
Chyba dowódca
leaving nothing
on
but
był
ash.
chyba do zdobycia,
Mograine
nie?
was later murdered by his son, Renault, with
Renault.
this very sword, but then was resurrected from the dead by Kel'Thuzad, to which he then wielded the Corrupted Ashbringer, which old school players were able to get their hands on if they were very lucky through the
Tak.
old 40-man Naxxramas, which is no longer in the game.
40-osobowy
The Corrupted
Naxxramas,
Ashbringer
tak.
was obtained from the Four Horsemen fight in that Naxxramas, which was prior to Wrath
Tak,
of
to
the Lich King's
jeszcze,
release.
Corrupted Ashbringera dało radę farmić i zdobyć w Tebecu.
Meaning you of course can't obtain this item anymore. Now back to the legendary Ashbringer. Since it
Okay.
wasn't actually in the game, no one really know what you would have
Jest
to go
ogłoszenie
through to
WoW, że
get
za
such a
9 minut
legendary
zamykam
weapon.
serwery, okej.
However, on February 24th,
Coś się dzieje.
2006, Ionix, who was once the community manager at Blizzard, stated on the official forums that it's true that currently the Ashbringer
Ale
is
kurde,
not in the game,
ale JPEG,
although one day in
kurde,
the future it will be,
smuży,
but not
nie?
until after there's an awesome legendary item for casters. He was most likely referring to Atiyesh,
Atiyesh.
and lo and behold, the Ashbringer is in the game today as the Ret Pally's artifact weapon. Also, the Corrupted Ashbringer
10
is an
lat
appearance
później,
that
czy
you can get for it as
15.
well. Now for the next
10 lat
legendary,
później.
Atiyesh, Great Staff of the Guardian, which was obtainable in vanilla by mages, warlocks, priests,
To też
and
zniknęło chyba,
druids.
to
Each
akurat
version of
zniknęło
the
chyba
staff
w
also had
Tebecu,
different
nie?
color ribbons to note the class differences. Now
Start
the
soda
effects of
jest
the
za
staff vary
30
depending
minut.
on your class. For druids,
22.
it increased your spell power by 160 and restored 11 mana per 5 seconds to party
To trzeba chyba było, pamiętam, zdobywać fragmenty tego Atiyesha, nie? Gdzieś tam na rajdzie.
members within 30 yards. The mage variation increased the wielder's spell power by 150, increased their hit by 16, and increased the crit rating of all party members within 30
A to było
yards
fajne, bo,
by
bo ten
28.
Atiyesh miał swoje warianty,
And the
nie?
priest variation increased the wielder's spell power by 160 and increased the spell
Każdy
power
miał
of all
swoją
party
wersję.
members within 30 yards by 33. And then finally, the warlock variation increased the wielder's spell power by 150, increased their crit by 28, and increased the spell power of all party members
Każdy był
within
inny
30
i
yards by
one chyba różniły się taką wstążką. One miały na sobie wstążkę i po prostu miał inny kolor wstążki.
33, and all of their use effects created a portal to Karazhan. Also, a flock of ravens would surround the caster's head, which was pretty
O,
neat.
to był
Now,
fajny
how
efekt,
one
tak,
would
tak.
obtain this legendary staff?
Że
Is
latały
first,
takie
they'd have
kulki
to
dookoła
gather
ciebie.
40 splinters of Atiyesh from bosses in the original Naxxramas,
To jest
which
znak
you then
Samasa
turned
się
into frames of
zdobywało.
Atiyesh.
Tak.
This frame of Atiyesh
O
had a
22
quest for you
start.
to seek out Anachronos and Tanarus, who would then give you the quest Atiyesh the Befouled Great Staff. For
Wszyscy
this quest,
trzeba
you
było
have
do
to defeat
Anachronosa iść.
Kel'Thuzad, who was the final boss in the original Nax, and loot the staff head of Atiyesh, which
Dziękuję bardzo, panie Mataro96, dziękuję bardzo.
was a
Będziesz pierwszym
100%
subem
drop
na
chance
kanale.
if you were on the quest. And then they had to defeat Cthulhu, the final boss of AQ40, who dropped the base of Atiyesh, which was a 100% drop chance if you were also on the quest. Acquiring
Ty czat, przejście musicie robić rajdy z poprzednich tierów, że tak to powiem, żeby zdobyć itemy na tą legendarną itemkę, nie? Trzeba mieć abonamencik do klasika, żeby zagrać. Tak, trzeba
but
mieć.
these parts
Ale
would
tylko
allow you to
abonament.
summon Atiyesh, who was a demon in Stratholme, and then you ultimately
A,
had
to
to
on
defeat
był,
him.
no.
Now Atiyesh wielded Adonisus, Reaper of Souls, which is another legendary, and he dropped it through the
O.
course of the fight. This
A to jest
weapon
na
can be
5
picked
minut
up by the
tylko.
player and used to defeat the demon. This weapon increased
Ale to był, zobaczcie, to był przedmiot tylko na 5 minut i to był pomagał po prostu w zabiciu tego demona. Podobna była mechanika później na rajdzie DI, gdzie walczyło się z Kael'Thasem, gdzie zabijało się jego przydupasów i z tych przydupasów dropiło się właśnie przedmioty legendarne, które były chyba tam na parę minut i one wzmacniały ciebie, nie?
the wielder's melee and range attack power by 600, and then defeating the demon
Strasznie dużo.
finished up the Atiyesh quest, allowing the caster to acquire the legendary.
Tak, Mage miał
However,
czerwoną
the
wstążkę,
legendary
druid zieloną
Adonisus
chyba, nie?
Reaper of Souls would disappear from the player after they have left Stratholme for 10 minutes. Next up, let's talk about the legendary Talisman of Binding Shard. This was a neck
O!
legendary that gives strength, agility,
Tak, to
stamina,
opowiadałem dzisiaj o
and some
nim.
fire and nature resistance.
To jest
Also a lightning bolt would
jednorazowa
float around the
ten.
player using it. It dropped from Baron Geddon in the Molten Core raid, however this legendary was never supposed to make it alive
Tak.
and slipped under the developers' noses.
Był
The
tylko
only
jeden.
individual to have ever looted this legendary is Noctin, from the guild Nerfed. Once
Patrzcie, ten gość dalej, kurde, jest, ten Savorks. Ale jazda, gość 72 level ma.
looted, it quickly got the attention of the developers, and they allowed him to keep it. It was then promptly removed from the loot table. This item left many to speculate why it was even created in the first place if it was never meant to be obtained. The reason isn't confirmed, but many believe it to originally be part of the Thunder Fury quest chain. This is because of High Lord Demetrian's flavored dialogue, which states, "What little remained of Thunderan's essence was stored within a talisman of elemental binding.
A, czyli część
Ragnaros
jakby...
then shattered the talisman in two
Część
flawless
mocy
pieces,
tych
the
tych
pieces
bindingów
assigned to
były
his
w
lieutenants.
tym naszyjniku. A to ciekawe. Czyli
Now for
rzeczywiście
the
to gdzieś tam
legendary
ten, tylko
dagger
jeden gracz to
known
miał,
as
czajcie?
Shard of the Defiler. Now not much is known about this dagger when it was first data mined around patch 1.12. This
To chyba było, że ktoś dostał chyba ten przedmiot przez przypadek do maila od GM'a czy coś takiego i zaczął to używać chyba.
dagger never made it to any sort of beta. It was most likely part of an early plan that was scrapped. Its source is unknown, but what is known is that it originally caused shadow damage and could proc an effect called Echo of Archimon, which turned you into a demon, which increased your crit strike and attack speed.
O
It seemed like
kurde.
this was geared more towards rogues
Nie,
and
tego chyba nie
hunters,
było, nie?
because everything is a hunter weapon.
Hunter Weapon. A, czyli tego nigdy się nie pojawiło w grze, ten item.
Next up, let's talk about the legendary mount known as the Black Karaji Resonating Crystal. This was
Okay,
a mount that
no.
was obtained through a server-wide effort to open the gates of AQ back in
już to
vanilla.
oglądaliśmy w
Timed
zasadzie
Blackwing
przesunąć
layer runs
troszeczkę.
had to be completed, a crafted buoy that lured outside of the raid. The Black AQ Scarab mount did have
Też oglądaliśmy,
no
nie?
other mount was allowed.
Wiemy,
So in
nie?
patch 3.0.2 PTR, when they added the other colored mounts, well, this Black AQ mount turned into a wasp in flying zones and allowed you to
So?
fly with it. This was fixed prior to the patch hitting live. Also, you could start
What?
summoning this mount while in combat as long as you left combat by the time the cast finished. This was also fixed prior to the patch.
O kurde, to był bóg, że można było tego się w kombacie ogarnąć.
Next up, Peep's Whistle. This was a legendary mount that was data mined from the patch 2.3 PTR and summoned Peep the Phoenix. This mount was essentially the
Phoenix.
prototype for Ashes of Alar
Ashes
mount
of
and
Alar,
has
no?
the same model anyways. The flavor text for this mount is "Welcome to Alex Country, buckle up." The Alex they're referring
Okay.
to is
Alex-
Alex Afrasiabi, who is
Oh.
the creative director for World of Warcraft.
O, Papa Afrasiabi. O, to jest ten, który, moi drodzy, był tym głównym skandalistą, kurczę, w tym skandalu blizzardowskim.
And now finally, Crafty's Pole. This is a legendary
Oh.
fishing pole that never made it alive and was found in the 4.1 game files.
Jezu,
This
fishing o
pole
1000?
increased the wearer's fishing by 1000.
Jezu.
And the flavor text reads, "Just holding this fishing pole makes you shiver with excitement. This is possibly the most amazing thing you've ever seen."
Tak, stary.
This was due in part to many players finding fishing as the most boring profession to level, so if you get this
Stary,
fishing
z tym
pole,
wszystko
you can fish
złapiesz.
anywhere without worrying about fishing level.
Tak.
So there you have it. Those were legendaries once obtainable that no longer are, or legendaries that were in the game files but never made it to live.
Okay.
Now I do have a couple honorable mentions here, mainly because I know people will point these items out thinking that they were legendaries, but really never were.
Kurde,
We
można
have the
było
fabled
więcej
artifact quality
opowiedzieć.
shirt item known as Martin Fury that could
O.
wipe out all
To była ta koszulka. To była koszulka, która zabija wszystkich w promieniu 30 yardów. I to był chyba przedmiot, który ktoś dostał randomowo od GM'a przez przypadek. I on to chyba używał i dostał bana, coś takiego.
enemies in a 30-yard radius.
Chyba było
In
coś
April
takiego.
of 2009, this was given to a player named Leroy Speltz on the
Leroy
server
Speltz.
Vecna Lash. His account was hacked, and once he retrieved his account, a GM tried to sending him everything that he lost, and lo and behold, this item was in the mail of his level 13
czyli jego zhakowali i ja w ogóle kiedyś też miałem haka na moim koncie. Ja się zalogowałem raz i nie miałem nic. Napisałem do GM'a i mi zwrócili wszystko. Ale i też dostałem jakieś tam rzeczy dodatkowe. Ale tutaj to mega
He then
przypadek, nie?
traded it to another guild member named Karate Chop. Both of them believed that this item was sent to them intentionally because it came from Blizzard Entertainment. So with their better judgment, their guild known as the Marvel Family, used it a
O.
total of 14 times, clearing raids like Old War, Eye of Eternity, and
Czajcie,
Obsidian Sanctum.
typowie wzięli to i kurde już wyklirowali rajdy tym shirtem.
Rapid progression grabbed the attention of GMs, considering this
Wow.
also granted them many World First achievements, and everyone who was online in the guild at the time was suspended for 24 hours,
Na 24
regardless of
godzin
whether
bana
they were in
dostali,
the raid
nie?
or not. Karate Chop's account was
Gość botował,
permanently
GM
banned,
zostawił
and the shirt was
wszystkie
changed to
skałki?
poor
O!
quality. Then we also have Martin Thunder, which was a main hand artifact quality weapon
A,
that
i
gave
taki sam efekt.
resistances to many of the spell schools, and had a use effect that killed
Ciekawe,
enemies
po co
in
takie
30
itemy w
yard
ogóle były
radius.
tworzone,
It
nie?
did not have a weapon type, meaning any class could have wielded this,
Czy może
although
przy
unlike
procesie
Martin
testowania
Fury,
na
it
przykład
was never
wykorzystywali
wrongfully
to,
given
nie?
to a player and was just a GM weapon used possibly for testing. You can still get the appearance of this weapon from Slave.
Czekajcie, zobaczmy, czy na przykład są te. Nie ma charge'ów. Zobaczmy, czy już możemy się zalogować, moi drodzy. Już włączyli? Chodzić w kolejkę? Chodzę w kolejkę! Jest, dobra, mam! 34! To dobry wynik, czat. To dobry wynik. Czat 34? To super wynik jest. Let's go! Let's go! 22 u mnie? 14 czat, wozimy. Dobra, pozdrawiam Nexus Live. See ya, trzymajcie się.